Hello, party people, and welcome to Office Hours, the stream where I talk through your Microsoft database questions. SQL Dev DBA in the house. Good to see you. SQL Dev DBA looks like G Surgeon from the Netherlands as well. So back in the office. I'm here in Vegas for like the next 2 months. I'm here for most of Vegas, or for most of July and August. Then the tail end of August, we head out to Alaska on a cruise. So you'll be seeing me doing office hours on live streams on Twitch, probably once a week, maybe twice a week. You know what's really funny? I try not to do too many office hours. I try to only do them like once a week because I don't want to flood the blog with lots of recordings, videos. But there may come a point where I like do 2 office hours in a single blog post, just because I feel like there are so many good questions, and the question queue for today is a great example of that. So in the very first question, the top voted question from Trushit asks, you mentioned in your career internals guide that you focus on high value things that the business is willing to pay for. How did you control the temptation of wanting to learn everything, and how did you just focus on SQL Server? So for me, the big thing was getting the book, Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's a productivity book, and of course most productivity books are like, work smarter, not harder. But this book was really revolutionary for me because it forced me to write down everything that I needed to do, not just for work, but for personal life. What do I need to do to be a better son, to be a better brother, to be a better husband? Like, what are the tasks? Because normally the people in your life, the people who love you, they don't sit down like a project manager would and say, all right, here's the deal. In the next quarter, we have deliverables to spend more time with me and learn more about my needs. And so forcing me to write those down and then realize how bad I sucked at each of those roles, I was frankly a better employee and a better database administrator than I was a son or a brother or a husband. And I think that's still true today. But at least it made me write down all the stuff that I thought I needed to do to be a better one. And then I was like, oh, snap. I have a lot of work to do around the house, you know, like around my own relationships and whatnot. So it helped me set a wall that after certain hours, you know, you pick whatever your working hours are for your job. After a certain hour, I got to clock out because I'm responsible to the people who are at home. Laurie Edwards had this phenomenal quote, the people you really work for are waiting for you at home. And so setting those boundaries really helped me go, there's lots of things that I would love to do. There's lots of things that I would love to be better at in terms of technology. But I also have a huge hill I have to climb at home too. So I got to set aside time for that. So that really helped me a lot there. And Trushit also says, by the way, looking forward to seeing you at the PASS Summit fanboy moment. That's how I felt when I first got started going to the PASS Summit conference as well. So there's this big annual gathering called the PASS Data Community Summit. It's held every year, usually in Seattle, usually in November or so. And it's a great opportunity to meet the people whose blog posts and presentations you've been reading for the past several years. I remember sitting in one of the sessions and just big, huge conference room and tons of people in there to see this blogger who wrote a lot about storage. And I'm not going to name the blogger's name here. You'll see why. And I'd been just devouring his stuff. The guy did amazing work. And I was sitting in this room and someone next to me says, this person is really not that good of a presenter. And I wanted to look at him and choke him and go, look, this person has been giving back to the community for years. I don't care whether or not they're a good presenter. I have learned so much from them. I'm much more about the content that's up on the screen than their presentation capabilities. And you should be impressed with them too. But that just isn't always how it works. So it was kind of funny. So I fanboyed out at all kinds of presenters and writers that I finally got the chance to meet. So I know exactly how that goes. I identify with that. Moore says the pass fees increased today, by the way. Yeah, they gave like one more week, I believe, for people to get the early bird pricing. Now, this only helps those of you who are watching this stream live. Those of you who are watching it recorded are a little out of luck. The prices have gone up a little bit since then. Next up, Keith asks, oh, Jonas says, oh my God, catching a live stream. Ta-da! Hey, welcome to the stream. And if I was a good streamer, if I was a really good streamer, I would schedule these in advance and I'd do them at the same time every week. I am not a good live streamer. I tend to focus more on the YouTube and TikTok replays, because on those I'll get thousands of people watching each session. Whereas in the live, there's only usually like a dozen of us. I think there's 24 viewers right now. So it's this I kind of view as like an in crowd, people who get in on the surprises. Cheetan, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. Cheetan, good to see you. And I'm probably mispronouncing your name, but I recognize your name right away. So Keith says, I have a vendor application that's creating over 7,000 connections, and my concern is potential Threadpool exhaustion. How do I figure out how much memory each connection is taking? Well, you're on the right track, but the problem with Threadpool really has nothing to do with memory. Yes, a large amount of connections can cause you memory exhaustion problems, but that's not what's going to lead to Threadpool. To understand what leads to Threadpool, check out my Mastering Server Tuning class. I have a module dedicated to Threadpool where we cause Threadpool waits due to worker thread exhaustion, and I show you all the different factors that you can change to mitigate that. I wish I had a simpler explanation, but that's one of those where I really have to devote 20, 30 minutes to answering it, and that's where the Mastering Server Tuning classes come in. Good morning, Ashish. Next up, Trushit. Oh, Trushit again. Says, I've been through your fundamentals classes. I write T-SQL for reporting, and I don't deal with execution plans that often. I'm struggling to choose between your class, Eric and Kendra's class, and their other class. Any thoughts? Well, these classes are at the Past Data Community Summit. They're live only. They're not recorded. So you have to make some tough choices. If all you do is write new T-SQL, I've got some kind of weird news for you. None of those three classes are really a good fit. I don't think there is a good fit for writing new T-SQL at that conference. So what I would do is, if you want to see each of us present just to see us present, then I have an all-day class one day, and Eric and Kendra have another all-day class one day. You could do that. I don't remember if I'm teaching Monday or Tuesday, but so you could take one of our classes one day and the other class the other day. If your boss will only let you see one, will not pay for both of them, that's a really tough call. I think you don't get the chance to see Kendra present very often because she doesn't do live streaming as much, whereas both Eric and I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. So if you could only pick one, I'd probably pick Eric and Kendra's, just because that'll be your one chance to see her live and in person. All three of us really enjoy presenting. I love watching Eric and Kendra. They are good personal friends of mine, and I cherish every chance that I get to see them present. You will not be let down. They're great presenters. Next up, Davros says, what's your opinion of Power BI and Databricks? I think Power BI, I almost said it's the new Excel. It's not easy enough to use that I would call it Excel, but it is that good. It's a phenomenal piece of reporting software. I don't use it every day, but it is the tool that I use to examine customer data when, so my customers, SQL critical care customers come in, they set up a monitoring app, it sends me data. I review their data using Power BI. It's fantastic. I enjoy it. It has weaknesses, but so does Excel. Databricks I've never used. Databricks I haven't touched. Next up, MustangKirby says, I was investigating a query that seemed stuck. I was watching with live query stats, and it was showing that it was hung up on a sort operation. I ran SP who is active, and it showed that physical reads were climbing greater than logical reads. What can cause that? Kirby, you were watching it. It was the sword. The killer is coming from inside the house. You don't need to do more investigation. You don't need to look around. Get out of the house. Go fix the sword, right? You saw it happening. Next, Mattia says, I want to show my developers the problems of abusing NOLOCK, but I'm having problems replicating your demo. So for my demos with NOLOCK, what you want to do is make sure two things. One, you don't have any non-clustered indexes. And two, alter table rebuild in between each time that you do the demo. So do alter table rebuild, then do the demo. When you want to do it again, alter table rebuild. Are real world problems only limited to tables with no clustered or no non-clustered indexes who have been freshly rebuilt? No, not at all. I just want to make sure that that's the quickest, easiest way for you to reproduce that demo. You do those two things, it'll work every time. Next up, Donna asks, do you ever see clients with too many SQL cooks in the kitchen? What misfortunes have you seen from this? Yes, sometimes people come in with either analysis paralysis or the gun pointing problem, where there are a bunch of people who are all yelling different opinions about, I believe that this is the problem. No, I believe that this is the problem. Well, as you can see here, and no one's built any kind of hypothesis or test harness that they can go do over in a development environment to go reproduce it. When you're in that kind of situation, when there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen and everybody's yelling different things, the best thing that you can do is build a simple, reproducible demo. When I click here, this happens, and here's proof. This is exactly what's happening in production. Now, if I change this and I click again, it doesn't happen anymore. That's what I want to do in production. Some of my work as a client is actually doing just that. I have a ton of demos that I built up to show different problems over the years. And so what I can do is I can say to a client, all right, here's exactly what's happening on your server. I'm going to do it with the Stack Overflow database. It's open source, so I can show you exactly how it works. We can step through it 5 times in a row if you want, and I'll show you when I change this, here's how it fixes it. And then that way it helps them understand. The keys there are making it as simple as possible and easy to reproduce, so that when someone says things like, let me show you that, or let me see that again, or what if I click this other thing, then I can go, oh, that's great, let's try that. Your fix, your proposed fix, let's put that in and let's see if that helps. Sometimes it will help too, and I'll be like, great, now you've got 2 ways to solve this problem. Or then the often problem is that it doesn't solve the problem, and I can go see, here's why what you're proposing doesn't work. There we go. Next up, Vinesh says, what's your opinion of SQL Server 2022's create external table functionality to export cold data to Azure in Parquet? I think it's a tool. It's a very specialized tool, because the only people who can use it are on SQL Server 2022 in Azure who need the data in Parquet format. So it's a really specialized tool. I don't know a lot of people in that scenario. If you're in that scenario, great, give it a shot. I haven't even bothered trying to touch it because I don't have any clients who are in that scenario. Let me rephrase, out of the hundreds of customers that I work with each year, there may be some who are doing that. They've just never come to me for help with it. So maybe it works perfectly. Maybe no one's using it, but I can also say I don't have a whole lot of clients in Azure. Nothing against Azure, it's just that I have a bigger reputation in the AWS circles, so people tend to come to me with AWS cloud stuff. I'm sure there are tons of shops using Azure. Next up, Dr. Disrespect. That's funny, where's my laughter button? Next up, Dr. Disrespect says, I'm thinking about changing careers. How hard is it to become a DBA? Just the big problem with becoming a DBA is getting someone to hand you the keys to their infrastructure, because people will rarely hand you those keys until you have a proven track record, because the data is the most secure thing that they have. You'd want to have people in that role who make very good decisions and have been gotten a lot of experience. So your best bet if you want to become a database administrator is to become either a developer or a sysadmin first, and then gradually work your way closer to the database to where you can spend an increasing percentage of your time on the database. And by the time you get to, say, 50% of your time spent on the database, you might be able to call yourself a junior database administrator, and then the next job title will open up much more easily to you. Next up, ChompingBIts says, I swapped to being a DBA about 3 years ago now. Your remark about having the same year of experience every year over and over felt a little too familiar. I know what you mean. He says, I've been learning to automate more stuff with DBA Tools and finding ways to improve the process, but what's your advice for better experience beyond quitting? Try to solve other people's problems. Go on to Stack Exchange, dba.stackexchange.com, stackoverflow.com, reddit.com, sqlservercentral.com. Go into those places and try to solve problems that people are having. That'll give you exposure to problems that you haven't had before. It'll also give you experience to communicating clearly with them, getting the right information out of them to solve the problem, and giving them the information in a way that is easy for them to understand and take action on. Plus, as you read other people's answers to those problems, you'll be exposed to more answers there as well. So that's a free way that you can do it in your spare time and get you that experience. And I specifically say that because you said you didn't want to quit. If you want to quit, the great two ways to do it are go to work for Microsoft support or become a consultant. And that both of those will be like rocket ships for your experience. Next up, Kate says, what's the top issue you run into with locating SQL TempDB on Cloud VM ephemeral drives? Most common one by far is that sometimes on restarts, the folders will disappear. And so SQL Server will go to start up, and you'll have configured TempDB to be in like whack MS SQL, whack TempDB, and the folders won't be there, and SQL Server won't start. So the easy way to fix that is you set the SQL Server service to delayed startup, and you have another batch file or PowerShell script that runs on startup and creates the folders. It does add a little bit of time to your startup, but just guarantees that those folders will be available. Other ways that you could accomplish that same thing would be to have a batch file on startup that just first creates the folders and then immediately starts the SQL Server service. Let's see here. Next up, MyTeaGotCold says, what's your favorite way to sabotage a server? And does SPBlitz catch it? So this becomes a moral and ethical question. I have friends who say you should never publicly talk about SQL Server's weak points. Because when you talk about those weak points, you are essentially teaching hackers how to do bad things. So I'm not going to talk about ways to sabotage a server, but I am going to talk about the number one problem that I see that causes servers to be sabotaged, and that's wide open linked server security, where someone sets up a linked server with a hard-coded username and password, and everyone who uses the server can use that linked server. Then they can trash the SQL server on the other side. Does SPBlitz catch that? Yes. We warn you when you have linked servers set up, especially ones with vulnerable or questionable permissions, and then you go and start catching those or fixing those. And then we'll do one more. Would Like to Know asks, is there a way to protect custom SQL from being viewed by others in a stored procedure? No, there's easy ways to work around decrypting stored procedures. If you really want to put something in the database that you don't want anyone else to be able to reverse engineer, your best bets are either going to be like a CLR DLL, like a .NET DLL, or else put it in an application server. Generally speaking, I wouldn't want you to think that stored procedures are good places to put large quantities of app code, especially if you're going to resell that, because the other problem is customers can change it. And then that results in a support nightmare because you have to support code and you're not even sure if it's your own code. All right, there we go. There's a whole bunch of questions for office hours. Next up, let's see, this morning, it's Monday at 6 a.m. out here Pacific time. I have to go run a couple of errands this morning, and then it's back to the work grind. So hopefully y'all learned something and had fun, and I will see y'all on the next office hours. Adios.